Okay, welcome everyone. Good evening, one and all. Great to see Siddhesh, Gayatri, and Chandni here. So we'll get started with the today's webinar, which is on TPD at scale, teachers professional development at scale. So the idea of TPD has been around like more than like many decades, and then it's a evolving theme. Like we do see a lot of research in the field at the same time, many innovations are being there. So in today's webinar, we have three esteemed panelists, Siddhesh, Gayatri, and Chandni, sharing their insights, their experiences in this aspect of TPD. How can we do it more effectively at scale? So we'll get started. Before that, I just want to quickly introduce the panelists. So first we have Gayatri. So Gayatri is working as an associate vice president at Education Initiatives Shiksha program, and she leads all the large scale assessment projects. She has more than 2 decades of experience, and she continues to develop innovative approaches to learning by applying assessments and pedagogical principles. Thanks for joining, Gayatri. The second panelist is Chandni. Chandni is a co-founder of Simple Education Foundations, where she leads the program strategy and innovations to strengthen the public system. She brings her expertise with the teacher development, program design, and also co-founded multiple initiatives like Kel Kelme Foundation. And there's an upcoming initiative as well as Teachers for Tomorrow. So thanks so much, Chandni, for joining. And we have Siddhesh, who is the co-founder and chief program officer at LFE. In the past, she has also represented SCRT at multiple NCRT committees and is currently leading the SOLVE project. Like it's a government partnership with AP, supported by the World Bank. Thanks, Siddhesh, for joining. Um, Okay, so just a brief to the participants. So the way we have planned for this webinar is scheduled for 1 hour 15 minutes, where initially for 45 minutes, we also already curated a few questions that we would like all the panelists to answer. Then we'll have 15-20 minutes open to all the participants to ask any more, to deep dive, to go more deeper into the things that uh, shared by the panelist. So we can also use the chat, like we'll be looking at the chat and like towards the end, we'll be taking all those questions also as much as possible. Okay, let me not keep you all waited. So let's get started. Uh, so I request all the three panelists to answer and feel free to like unmute and share like as and when you are ready. The initial questions would be for everyone. So the first question that's coming as I was starting my brief, the TPD is a evolving aspect, like teachers' professional development. I would like to understand your own journey with TPD. How the idea of TPD for you, what was it before, and being with the field, experiencing working, how has it been evolved for you? So request anyone of you to get started with this.
Gayatri, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, no, hi, Manoj. Thanks for the introduction. I think my journey in the space of education, I was in academia earlier, so my exposure to education is roughly around 12 years old. And when I came to the field, came much like a novice, with an intent of doing something good, but did not really understand much. So my understanding back then of teacher professional development, also carrying it from the academia, was more like year-end refresher courses that happen for higher grade or university teachers, and that's the understanding I brought in. And my very first project that we were working on with the state of Gujarat on board reforms, I was conducting trainings, and I realized that the trainings that we were doing as part of EI's project were very different. Still, for me, teacher professional development at that point was more about having trainings and workshops that can help teachers learn and deliver better, but it was a very generic idea. And as I got to participate in multiple state initiatives, work with different states, also read up, study, and conduct a couple of teacher needs assessments, it has definitely evolved. First, it can't be just trainings, and the whole training fatigue as a concept is now much more understood by me, right? I mean, it's very easy for us to say teacher professional developments would mean trainings, and the trainings also generally what I've seen over the years has been very generic set of trainings. We consider that there can be one set of trainings that can be deployed across different states, different needs of teachers without really understanding what is that teacher's actual need. Um, Also a realization that the presumption or the foundation on the basis of which we build our understanding of TPD is that teachers do not know something. So there is an understanding that, oh, they might be deficient and they need this supplement, rather than saying that this is something. The field of teaching is so complex and evolving because it includes subject matter expertise, it includes classroom transactions and transmission. It also includes factors like socio-emotional intelligence, where the teacher has to be, empathetic, reach out to each child, problem solve for children. So I think understanding that a teacher has to navigate through a very complex situation on a daily basis inside the classroom, and designing training courses based on the needs that the teacher might have, which can be different for different cohorts, at least if not individualized, is something where I've come to believe. And I do believe that through, I mean, EI, we do assessment. So my understanding is that if you have a good, robust assessment of understanding of where teacher needs supports on some of these areas, then it can be more tailor-made. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
Thanks for sharing, Gayatri. Yeah, so great to hear a lot of things. Like maybe I'll sum it up at a later point. Request Siddhesh or Chandni to share your.
Siddhesh, do you want to share or should I go ahead?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just connecting a lot to Gayatri, what you were sharing as well, reflecting on that evolution of the journey. But I'll share a little bit about my own evolution. So I started myself as a government, like I was teaching in a government school through the Teach for India Fellowship for a couple of years, became a teacher coach myself, and then eventually through Simple Education Foundation, working in one school with government teachers side by side, as Gayatri said, understanding their needs, what really works in a government school, and then pivoting to large scale teacher reform programs and in service teacher development. So, played multiple roles myself. So, my evolution has been not only in my own understanding, but in my own practice as a teacher coach, then developing programs for government teachers in schools, and then larger programs. One thing that I think really has stuck by me is one key learning is that a teacher is a very critical point in a child's life, right? So there are 140 million children in India who depend on government school education. And I strongly believe that a really loving and skilled teacher is the key pivot point in getting that child to different life outcomes, a different life path, and seeing success in their lives. And the difference between like a kid really thriving or falling through the cracks. So, what does it mean for us to really think about teacher professional development responsibly, more than as something that has to be done? There are three things I would say that I have really learned in terms of evolution. And I would say one or two are very closely connected to what Gayatri was sharing as well. The first thing is that, teachers don't resist growth. They want to grow, they are willing to grow, and they want to learn. What they resist is irrelevance, their voice not being heard, and systems that are not made for them. So very connected to needs. So one is just around like they're not resistant to growth. I think that's the first learning. The second learning and evolution has been more around that they don't need more training, they need better training. Which I think is very connected to Gayatri, what you were saying, right? That just generic training, one size fits all, it's not differentiated. It's really based on deficiencies we need to fix in teachers versus they are abundant. So teachers are abundant with best practices. they have a lot of wisdom they can offer. So how can you restructure or redesign trainings or professional development, which is more practice based, which is more co-created, which is connected to classrooms? That's, I think, the second thing. And the last thing I think we often miss because we're so caught up in delivery mode is that it has to be like all teacher professional development has to be designed for classroom level impact. What's the shift going to happen for children? How can you be as obsessed with implementation as you are with delivery of a training module or of a professional development program? I think our responsibility as organizations does not end at like program delivery. It has to end at implementation, classroom adoption, student level shift. So I'll just sum it up. So for me, it was, I think somebody's asked that in the chat as well. So I'll quickly sum it up. I think the first thing is that teachers welcome growth. What they resist is irrelevance. The second thing was around, ensuring that they get better training, more practice-based training. I think that's been a growth. And the third thing I think I've learned about is more about how do you get programs to be designed for classroom level impact, rather than just being input, output, or delivery focused. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chandni, for sharing. I think those three things will be staying with us, and especially I love the aspect of loving and skilled teachers. Like that's like a big piece, and uh, yeah. So I request Siddhesh to share his
Yeah.
thoughts. Thanks.
Thanks, Gayatri and Chandni. I'm really happy to be here talking about our collective learnings and building on this understanding. So I'll start with my journey of understanding. I started my journey of teaching as a Teach for India Fellow in 2011. So my understanding of training was whatever helped me be a better teacher every day in the classroom, whether it is making a lesson plan, whether it is doing some energizer or doing some fun activities to engage the children and ensure that they learn better. So learning all of these things, so I took it for granted that as somebody who does not have a B.Ed degree, somebody who probably just has comes from a decent university and a good intent, maybe I need to learn, and that is something I took it as granted that ye to karna hi hai. How, of course, all of us need this. Then after Teach for India experience, of course, and I went on to study education, and I learned that there is a broader sort of understanding as to how over the years schooling access has improved. Number of schools have shot up from 2 lakh to more than around lakhs of schools, right? At around 10 lakh schools, I don't know. Many such schools in the country, not just government schools, private schools, aided schools, urban, your affordable private schools. So the type of schools also are changing. So I understood that the policy itself has evolved in a way and changed things in such a fast pace that for existing groups of teachers to keep up, then professional development was seen as the only way. So that was something that I realized. Then when I started working with SCRTs, I realized that it was something that needed to be done because it's an annual program. There is necessary has to be a module, there has to be something that is written, then at a cascade level you have to do things, and I learned all of this. So I learned from my own experience of taking for granted that okay, this is something that as a teacher of course I need to learn, which is resonating with Chandni as to not resisting growth. I also realized that how when repeated activities keep coming, what Gayatri was mentioning to do with training fatigue, compliance related activities, these take the center stage rather than being rooted in the purpose of teachers learning, growing, implementing newer ideas in the classroom and so on. So that has been my understanding and evolution, that it is not just about one teacher in one classroom. Then I also understood that outside of this government setting, there is also a bunch of private schools where school managements keep buying different products, keep updating books. So each company who is coming with books, or each company who is coming with a lab, or today in this day and age it is AI and robotics, yesterday it was personal adaptive learning, day before it was something else. Everybody had their own training module so that the teacher had to be oriented. So even the textbook agencies, whether it is NCRT or Bal Bharati in Maharashtra, whenever they update any textbooks, the teachers have to be trained. So any small change that happens anywhere, the focal point then becomes the teacher, and then teacher has to be trained, and that is a necessary sort of pathway for any new implementation. So this has been my understanding, that this is a combination of the changing scenario in the education sector, the changing policies. Even NEP now mandates 50 hours compulsorily for teachers to be trained, because that's how rapidly the skills are changing, job market is changing, education sector is changing, and to keep pace with it, we must also keep learning. So I'll pause here. This has been more of a broader understanding as to how this has evolved.
Thank you, Siddhesh, for sharing. It's great to hear from you. So now that we like you shared about your evolving understanding, love to understand from your like as from EI, from SEF, from LFE, what has been your practices? What are certain principles that you have shared? How you are able to bring it to TPD at scale? Also, would love to hear, like, I think last 10 minutes stressed upon training and need-based training, make it more relevant for teachers and all. Like, how are these things coming out? And is there anything else apart from training that are also part of TPD as part of your initiatives that you are taking up? So maybe we can follow the same order, maybe Gayatri, Chandni, and Siddhesh. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
No, thanks, Manoj. Thanks for the question. I think if I go back to the whole need of TPD and looking at how EI sort of takes it forward, EI's overall focus has been on understanding or diagnosing the areas where work is required. We don't consider ourselves as experts on teacher professional developments, but do believe that with a very good, robust assessment of a teacher needs, what we can highlight and come up with is the areas where teachers may require support, and that can help us build the capacity of teacher, both in terms of their ability to do the classroom transactions, but also make them future ready, because typically now AI has been around, and maybe many of our teachers, really the discussion around trainings would begin now more about AI. Like Siddhesh was sharing, it's always something new that we are chasing. But there are certain core principles of teaching, learning, assessments. I think one, ensuring that that all the teachers are equipped on some of those aspects alike. And then, of course, they are more future ready. So from EI's perspective, if I talk of, we have done projects on teacher needs assessments, both in private school setup. Also, we have something that we've designed for teacher assessments with state governments also as part of different projects. We've done teacher needs assessment. Recent example being Tripura, where we assessed around 30,000 teachers. And the understanding here and the way you design assessment basically focuses on understanding the mastery and the support required in the areas of subject knowledge, which is the core expertise of the subject that the teacher needs to have. And with that, also on pedagogical practices, which is more about the classroom transaction and classroom practices. Now, based on this and based on the finding, and typically this is where I think we can evolve and do better, is also rather than working as organizations in silo, I think the outcomes from these assessments can actually be taken up by any organization like SEF, LFE, and many others who are working in the space of designing teacher professional development courses to help cater to these needs in a very specific, customized manner. So by and large at EI, the focus remains on teacher needs assessments and identifying the areas where we can support teacher to take this forward. One area where we have very consciously done teacher professional development is building teachers' capacity on creating robust scientific assessments. Because I think that's one aspect that, again, in that typical list of trainings that we have, like again, now with NEP coming in, the 50-hour training really will be more married to the idea of completing 50 hours of training, then ensuring that those 50 hours are really, really useful. And one of the observations from the systemic reforms that we've done is that the area of trainings around assessment or equipping teachers to be appreciative of high quality assessments is something that requires attention. And that's where we've done first-hand work as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Gayatri, for sharing. Chandni, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gayatri. I think similar in terms of principles, I would say I'll talk about the principles first. So, one is definitely that any kind of training or intervention that's designed must be rooted on classroom realities and what teachers are also asking for. So one, I would say what we do is we do a large scale teacher survey. Like I'm just trying also going to highlight the very concrete practices we do towards this. So one is definitely having an understanding of classroom realities and needs in any state that we work in. That's a core principle. The other core principle is that everything needs to be co-created with government stakeholders. Co-created with government stakeholders in terms of design and of course implemented by the government. So that's another very core design principle. And the third thing is that would say the third principle that we hold very dear is ensuring data and evidence informed decisions are being taken at all levels of leadership, whether it's at the district level, the block level, the state level. How is data really driving decision making? Because a lot of times in the government, things are driven by urgency more than deliberate or deliberation. So, those are, I would say, three principles we operate with in terms of what we do and how we focus a lot on the design. What kind of teacher professional development interventions do teachers get at the state level for foundational learning, general pedagogy? So training design, and also what kind of, let's say, demonstration videos do they get? What kind of handbooks, teacher handbooks or guidebooks do they get? So we are involved in ensuring that they get more than training, stronger design interventions that they get and stronger inputs. The other element of our work is implementation. So that is done through ensuring that every teacher has a coach. So every teacher has an instructional coach. This is implemented through, there's a national mentoring mission which has been rolled out all over the country, which is, I think, a very big gift to just teacher professional development as whole. And then how are different state governments building their mentoring cadre and deploying their mentoring cadre to ensure that every single teacher has an instructional coach. Whatever they are learning in training is getting implemented and adopted at a classroom level. And we ensure we support districts, blocks, and the state to ensure that this uh, like delivery and implementation cycle is complete. So that's the core work that we do in our in-service program. Um, how do we ensure our principles are live? We do a need analysis in the states that we work with. So similar to what Gayatri said, but a lot of it is survey based also on what do the teachers want. So this is something we deployed in Delhi. It's been happening in Delhi for many years. And I think a proud moment for us was in the last year, the districts, all the diets deployed it independently. So instead of us as a knowledge partner at a state level having to push and do that, it was something that was institutionalized, budgeted in the state, and all the districts were deploying a needs assessment for teachers. So there was a much more differentiated, personalized kind of support that was given through that. And that was something I think that was meaningful in our work. Yeah.
That's great, Chandni. I just have a small follow-up question on the part of survey. So what I'm understanding is largely based on the teacher's interest. But to
Yeah.
design the trainings, the TPD and all, like, is the survey is the only base, or is there any other factors you
Yeah.
consider for that?
So we consider, thanks. First of all, that's a great question because a lot of the times you have to differentiate between are these needs or are these wants? Like, how do we ensure that we're capturing realities? So there is a teacher voice. So we have it's called the Voice of Teacher survey. And then there's classroom observation data that comes from a mentor, the mentor teacher cadre or the coaches. So we look at both the classroom observation data as well as the teacher survey data. And we also are talking to district officials and state officials about what are patterns they are seeing. Is there a state priority? And all these three things considered formulate what would go out in terms of the teacher development program for that year.
Got it. Thanks, Chandni. Yeah. Siddhesh, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks. Again, Gayatri, Chandni, you've made my job easier. It's largely, in fact, identical to what Chandni was saying in terms of needs assessment and having that differentiated teacher voice coming into it. Co-creation has been part of our DNA since inception. We have always believed that we will co-create unless it is something that expertise is not there. We will work on building it, but at the same time, we won't. It will be highly co-created. So that's definitely one thing. Couple of things that I will add to what Chandni said, and I know that SEF has also worked on this. One is developing an internal point of view as well as in co-creating that point of view with the state SCRT or diet is on what makes an ideal teacher, right? What is that teacher competency framework, or what is now even the country has come up with something called the National Performance Standard for Teachers, where they define that an ideal teacher should have these characteristics, right? So while obviously all these characteristics any one program or a series of program cannot contend with, which is why I think both the organizations have realized that one has to intervene at a pre-service level before, as teachers are learning to become teachers, how do we ensure that all of these aspects are enshrined into their ways of working, their ways of being. So that is definitely one thing. But I think making this teacher competency framework has been a very good experience for both the organizations, I'm sure, and also then having that conversation with the states, saying that why this is important and how this is going to help root some sort of a direction to the state. So that is one layer which I will add. The other is in terms of how do we differentiate what is taught in these trainings. So yes, needs assessment, which is not just teachers saying कि मुझे math science सीखना है. It is more to do with a combination of what is difficult for me, what strategies do I want to learn. So and marrying three things. So to take that needs assessment conversation forward, it's a combination of FGDs where HMs or cluster HMs do FGDs with their teachers. And sample FGDs being FGD, I mean focus group discussions, where groups of teachers, people come together and discuss on what they feel is good in the training, what can be improved. Other than training, is there any support we need? Then the second set of data points. So this is a teacher level data point where teachers are expressing it themselves. The second set of data points, of course, comes in from a standardized classroom observation tool, which is LFE is currently using the Teach tool. Coming from there, saying that this is what the mentors are going and observing, that these are the general pedagogical areas which teachers are doing well and need to improve on. And the third part, again in collaboration with education initiatives in Andhra Pradesh, we have access to a lot of student assessment data. So what the data says we must do, what the teachers say they like and they want and are interested in learning, and what mentors are also saying that support is needed. So we try to do all of these things together. It's not an easy task. We are also learning how to do it better and better every year. And then maybe come to an understanding of prioritizing for this year. Okay, let us focus on these high priority areas. So that is another aspect, and it can look different for different districts. It can look different for different states, but this is the principles, again, going by what Chandni was saying, that adding a layer to that in terms of how it can look. So that is one thing that has worked. And the other differentiating factor I would say is also in terms of the content. It is not just about making a course, having a PPT, voiceover. What we have learned and what teachers in Maharashtra, whenever we ask them कि आपको कैसा content चाहिए, they said that we don't want in-depth theoretical foundations. Although as academicians, and I know Gayatri also has come from academia, we value the importance of theoretical foundations. We try to balance that with demo videos of a shot in classroom or which look like the teacher's own classroom, right? So if we have a teacher whose children in classroom look like my context, then my potential buy-in to that suggestion or that demo is also higher. So it's not just about talking, the what of the training is not just about the foundations. Of course, we try and research, but we also given some demo videos and say that, okay, this particular strategy of composing and decomposing numbers, this is how you can try and do it. Or this style of asking open-ended questions, this is how it looks like in the classroom. So that is another thing which I feel is something that I have learned, and teachers have ensured that LFE is doing it, because just giving a PPT or just giving handbooks, We used to do that, and that is something the teachers are saying they want more. Just giving that is not somewhere working. There's another component of which we are experimenting with. I know this, I don't know how well it is going to be received. It's an experiment. Is again, some of the teachers have said that whenever they either go on a WhatsApp chatbot or any other resource platform like a Diksha or other platforms, there are full videos, full PDFs which are lengthy, right? All of us in our way we interact with technology through AI is that we say something and conversationally somebody says something back to us. So we're trying and seeing whether a conversational chatbot can be created where teachers are saying my children or my classroom mate children have a difficulty in remembering number names. So then how can I conversationally the bot respond to that particular teacher without just sharing a static video on counting? That video may be 7 minutes long and it might not be, all strategies may not be relevant to that teacher. So how do we have that conversation? This is another thing we're experimenting. This is not live yet. We're still figuring out whether this can be feasible, how this will look like. So these are different aspects, again, combining with the good principles that Chandni and Gayatri have said about being it needs-based, being iterative, being community-driven, having engaging content, trying to see how technology and scale, etc., can also be weaved.
Great. Thanks, Siddhesh. I think based on the response, I could also see like how the theme of TPD is evolving, or like there are a lot of other practices that individually organizations are doing. I can hear the mentors and the handbook being like a support to the teachers, assessment driven, outcome driven trainings and all that. So great to hear all that. Also, I really like especially what Gayatri mentioned about there are certain core principles for teachers which will remain same no matter what, and there will be all these future learnings and things which will come like as and when new things come into picture. So also the principles and practices how Chandni has put like really help to visualize few initiatives that SCF is doing. So thanks for sharing all that. And, my next question is an obvious question. Working with a system at such scale, there will be always a lot of learnings. And I'm sure like programs are also evolved based on these learnings. Also, there would be a lot of challenges working at such scale. So would love everyone to share any top two key learnings and top two key challenges. Um, yeah, so maybe Siddhesh, would you like to start? Uh, yeah, great.
Sure. I will start with a very, very obvious blind spot. So I know Chandni and I were discussing this demo videos, but one thing recently I was in Telangana for a conversation on, and Gayatri was also there, part of it. One big blind spot has been the very composition of classrooms in which teachers teach, which we have not paid attention to while designing these training programs. That is multi-grade and multi-level classrooms. So for those who are in the webinar, just to define it a little bit further, one is in many government schools, they're so small, there are 20 or 30 children and 4 children will be in grade 1, 12 children will be in grade 2. The same teacher is teaching all 4 grades at the same point in time. But when we design maybe a lesson plan or maybe a handbook, we are designing it for an ideal student in an ideal classroom of grade 2, assuming ideal knowledge level. Maybe yes, we make room for some differentiation, but it has been a blind spot for us that we have not taken into. So this is a huge challenge as to and if a state is investing, say, 100 crore rupees in some program, it's not just about LFE's time and effort. State is investing money. They would also want to invest it in something that makes sense for everyone. So as a state, an SCRT or any body is responsible for making that ideal grade level content. And then acknowledging that, okay, children, so one is this multi-grade, the other is multi-level, where in the same grade, not all children are at the same learning level. They have different learning needs. Some are able to cope up fast, some need more attention and time. So that also causes challenge. So how do we ensure that differentiation is, it is important. It was the hardest skill for me to learn as a teacher. So how do I look at 100,000 teachers learning it at scale and be able to do it effectively is still a challenge. The other thing which so this has been a blind spot. And the other thing has always been to see how parallelly things can run, in the sense, looking at it again from a state perspective, not from an NGO perspective, is that at any given point of time, any teacher has a learning need. Science teachers at 6 to 8 level want to learn something. Maths teachers at foundational level need to learn something. Plus, at a national policy level, there are prerogatives that FLN karna hi hai. So how do we balance these needs based? All of us agree that needs based hona chahiye, right? We would not do something that the teachers don't need or want. At the same time, there are certain policy prerogatives that necessarily need to go because budgets are earmarked for it. Many multilateral funders, there are donations have got certain teacher training KPIs. Now in AP it may be World Bank, somewhere else it may be ADB, somewhere else it might be UNESCO, OECD, whatever it is. There is certain KPIs which says that certain number of teachers have to be trained by a certain number of times. All of this creates a sense of pressure and a closeted environment within which to work, which sometimes challenges this philosophy of always all training being need based. So this has been my learning kya hai is that we need to think more and we need to work better to integrate this differentiation aspect. But the challenging part is still remains differentiation, hyper contextualization, because even within Telugu there are differences, even within Marathi there are regional differences. We cannot have examples like, say, and we had some lesson plan creators giving an example that go to a shopping mall and count number of categories of goods. We were like, in the average child in our school is not going to have that opportunity, so that doesn't make sense. So how do we control for all of these aspects? I'll pause here, but again, yeah, just these two big things have been blind spots and has been a wake up call for me to start thinking differently, for sure.
Got it. Thanks, Siddhesh. Gayatri, would you like to manage?
Sure. I think it's learnings and challenges both are still mixed. I don't think we have found answers as of now. We are still evolving and looking for answers, I think, collectively. But I think if I talk of teacher needs assessments or surveys, and from that perspective, and bringing in the systemic approach, right? We generally work with states on such projects. I think the very first and very big challenge is knowingly, unknowingly, these assessments become very high stakes. There is a very strong perceived fear or punitive actions at the end of the teachers. The teacher unions come into play, and that whole energy becomes more about what will happen if we don't perform. So it knowingly, unknowingly, and sadly becomes a performance exercise rather than an exercise where we actually diagnose the areas where the actual work has to go in terms of teacher professional development. So I think that still remains a very strong challenge. In certain states where we are working, I think we've started working, and the states are also aware of it. So there are efforts put around doing pre-communication on these assessments and all, but I think it's still not a fully solved problem. So that's the learning on how to navigate pre-assessments part of communication, and still also remains a challenge. That's one of the challenges. I think second is in the previous this thing Chandni mentioned, and I think Siddhesh also mentioned just now, teacher professional development, rather than seeing it as one standalone activity, it requires triangulation with student learning outcomes. What are the levels of students learning? What are the overall processes that are being exercised? What is the process fidelity in the state? And putting all these four things together, triangulating it and identifying what are the actual needs that are emerging out is an area of learning. We can't just go back and say subject knowledge is at this level for XYZ teacher, and that's why they need this support. I think it's even arriving at the TPD model or framework requires a lot of triangulation. Oftentimes, these data points are not available unless there are like multi-pronged projects that states take up. It becomes slightly scattered. That can be a limiting factor. Third thing again goes back to one-sided training or lecture mode versus demo videos. And I would just add to the ability to do hands-on during these trainings or courses. Because a lot of these trainings, the 50 hours, the 20 hours, all these models we've tried, typically the approach has been to deliver. And that's where I think Chandni's point on resistance of what is irrelevant comes in, right? Teachers know these things in principles. I think what they have not been able to find time with is to sit and work on it and actually discover what's their level of mastery. So I think learning as well as ongoing challenge, when I think of it at scale, is the hands-on experience and the follow-up analysis. So after the TPD is done, how are we tracking teachers' progress is still not really clear. The good part is, I think, like AP, one example that we've been taking, there are states and there are projects where there is this multi-partner, multi-pronged approach that is coming in, which does allow for some amount of collaboration and bringing more layered approach to TPD, but still not fully solved for. Manoj, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Gayatri, for that. Chani, would you like to share on? Also, I would request Chani to also maybe you can also share about the co-designing with the government. How has it been? Yeah, please.
Sure, sure. I think just I'll do a side note as part of just hearing Gayatri and Siddhesh. It feels like Gayatri, Siddhesh, and I need to have another 1 hour conversation about other things because it feels like so many things are aligned. Think I'll also just acknowledge two things that really stood out to me from what Siddhesh and Gayatri shared. When Siddhesh spoke about, mixed grade multi-level classrooms, I think that's a very strong reality for us. In fact, our team is conducting a research with the SCRT Uttarakhand because single teacher schools and mixed grade multi-level classrooms are a huge reality in Uttarakhand. They're probably the majority rather than being the minority because usually it also depends on geographies. So India is extremely diverse, and the kind of state it is, it will really require a lot of personalization and understanding of teacher needs, realities, and how school systems are structured. So really resonate with what Sudesh was saying about like deeper research responsibility and responsiveness to challenges that are real for that state and real for teachers in that state. So I do see a lot of work does need to happen for single teacher schools and classrooms. It is a very strong reality, maybe not in urban settings where we all reside, but in rural regions, this is a huge reality. And mixed grade multi-level classrooms. I think the lessons, if I have to think of it in lessons, is like really pay attention. Pay attention to what the needs of the state are, what the needs of the geography is, how school systems are structured. Know that pulse, and I really resonate with Siddesh with that. And also, it is your responsibility to turn the government's attention to those things because a lot of times it's a one size fits all. And what is your responsibility as a partner to be like, hey, look at this, we need to do something about this. So that's something. um, the other piece feel like what Gayatri was talking about in terms of the data triangulation or responsibility around data. What data are we really collecting? How are we learning about what teachers are learning? Our teachers, these all these questions we almost always like, I think on a daily practice. Are teachers learning? Are they using the practices in the classroom? Is it having any impact on student learning? How do we know that? Those are questions that keep us going all the time. A lesson I think I would have learned from that is that data, a lot of times we collect a lot of data as well, and then we don't know what to do with it. So I think data is very useful. It needs to answer some very critical questions. So that's one. What are the critical questions we want to answer about teacher learning, about teacher practice, about student transformation? How do we collect that data meaningfully? And the last thing, which is the most important thing, is how does that data translate into action? Because even if the first few things are sorted, the last thing usually does not happen, where that data insight or that data is usually driving action, driving whether it's our programs or driving ultimately the government's actions. And that's what it should be doing. So, how do we kind of focus on that and ensure that data driven actions and insights are happening? It's not a reporting requirement. Um, The other lesson that I would say that I have definitely learned through the years is that you have to be very patient. There's no shortcut. A lot of the times we try to find like quick fixes, quick things, but there's no shortcut to systems change. You need to be slow, be deliberate. A lot of times people think that बहुत slow हो रहा है government से. Actually, no, when you work with the state, decisions are taken very fast. I would say our responsibility for teachers and children is that you need to be deliberate, very thoughtful about what you're doing, and not get caught up in doing things swiftly, and then sometimes under the cloak of urgency we lose our agency. So how do you ensure that you have that thoughtfulness and that ability to see clearly? It is a huge responsibility, because at a statewide level, at an in-service level, you are influencing lakhs and lakhs of children. The number is not in hundreds or thousands, and that's a huge responsibility to bear. So how are you going deliberate in the work that you're doing? I think that's been a huge lesson. Um, the last thing I would say is still a challenge that remains, and I would love to talk to Gayatri and Siddhesh about answers that they have found to this, is that there's these predictable, I would say, shocks to the system that come, like lack of continuity of leadership, lack of institutional memory. Something was amazing, it worked 10 years ago, and then things change and then it's all forgotten about. So there have been actually beautiful things that have happened in the government. And then leadership changes or a cycle changes and then it's lost somewhere. And there's no kind of sustainability or continuity that happens. And then sometimes it feels like you might be moving in circles. And that's been a bit of a challenge. And how do you break through those things and how do you have that kind of ability to see that long term? That's been something that stays with me. Another challenge, again, I would say this is more like a lesson, which is the last one I'll share because I'm taking up too much space, is that there is a difference between transformational reforms, or like really when we're overhauling things, and incremental changes. And incremental changes in the system are also very meaningful. I'll give an example. So, a transformational reform is like introducing a mentoring system into the entire state. That is huge. It's a huge shift. But an incremental reform, which is just that, okay, at the end of a training, we're going to give an assessment to teachers to just see are they learning. But it is very valuable. And anytime you're doing work, you need to have a blend of both those incremental reforms and those transformational ones, because that's really what's going to get things moving. I think that's been a very strong learning and takeaway. Yeah.
Thanks, Chandni. I think each of the points that you have mentioned, like all three of you, I think needs like a separate webinars, maybe like to discuss in depth about each of these things. Uh, I'll move on to my last question, then maybe we can move on to the like participants to ask questions. So I'll ask two questions. I'll club two questions. Maybe in your response you can club those two. So one, I think in some of your responses you have mentioned, but pretty great explicitly if you can mention how do organizations like SCF, LFE, or EI, or in general like organizations which are working in this ecosystem can collaborate on this. So that's my first question. And second thing is, um, like, what is the hope with respect to, or what is the hope with respect to TPD, or yeah. So that's basically like, what are you like most optimistic? As Chandni was also saying, it requires a lot of patience. So what is it that you are most optimistic with respect to TPD? And the first question, which is on the collaboration. So maybe Gayatri, would you like to get started and we can follow?
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, I think one of the biggest challenges that all of us need to solve for is educational organizations working in silos. So I think collaboration is the biggest need of the hour, because I was in some other discussion and we were discussing that, while you can't have identical missions at the organization level, I think all of us are working for the same objective. So as far as we have this objective alignment on making teachers more equipped to deal with classroom complexities, collaboration and bringing in your expertise in a way where it feeds into the next organization's strength is the way to move forward. This has been, at least in my understanding, has been happening in some states where we are working. Typically, if I take Andhra Pradesh SALT project example, I think LFE and EI have tried to collaborate in the way where data coming out of assessments, this is student learning assessments, of course, but that data is being utilized to fine tune the teacher's needs and teacher training. I think a lot more collaborations are possible where maybe one of us who's into assessments like EI can do that part. Someone can bring in the teacher professional development planning around frameworks. Someone can bring in the mentor aspect of it, because these are all individually also very complex but very niche areas. And rather than every organization doing everything, I think it's only through collective efforts that we'll be able to solve for it. So one, completely up for it. And I've seen some advantages of collaborative efforts in a couple of World Bank projects that we are doing. On the future of TPD or how it should be, plus 1,000 on Chandni's point on patience. I think two things, like transformation is something where we want to change everything overnight. So you need to have so much of action and rigor to change, bring that change, and at the same time have that patience that you can wait for decades together. So of course that, but I do believe that with AI and other things coming up, hopefully, if we really mindfully use it, a lot of time that the teacher is spending on administrative work, first of all, that if goes away through some tech support, AI enabled mechanisms, then first of all, it frees up teachers' time to go for trainings and courses. I think right now the poor teacher is struggling with the day job because there are multiple things that a teacher does alongside teaching. That also came up during our Telangana discussion. So one, of course, creating more magical time for teacher to get trained. And again, technology. So, and this is something that I'm realizing is also the logistical challenges that you face when you do things at scale. So if I take example of a state where there are around 30,000 teachers require certain types of trainings, it's extremely resource, time, energy, and money intensive for a state to plan in-person collective trainings for these people. Can it move to asynchronous spaces through demo videos, through interactive assignments and platforms? I think some of these are glimmers of hope for me, where it becomes more teacher centric and is more designed to make teacher grow rather than feel, compelled to come at a central position, stop everything and just get that training and go back. So those are some of the thoughts, Manoj, from my side.
Thank you, Gayatri. Yeah, Chandni, would you like to go next? Yeah.
Yeah, really echo Gayatri's points about collaboration on just starting with shared outcomes, a shared vision, and not overlapping activities. I think a lot of times organizations and even governments with organizations might feel like, oh, we're, stepping on each other's toes, and then they fear collaboration. But as long as you're aligned on that vision and outcomes, you can figure out what best you have to offer and work meaningfully. For us, it has worked. Collaboration has worked as long as it's well defined and meaningful. In Punjab, we regularly collaborate with other organizations like CSF, Sanchi Sikya, who are very much on the ground, and it's a very complementary kind of partnership. So we do see incredible value in that. And I think as an organization, our ethos is to collaborate. Like you'll get farther together. We do believe in that for sure. Um, in terms of collaboration, I think there are certain things that you have to think about, that it is going to be slow, it is going to require trade-offs, it is going to require negotiation, trust, all of those things. Um, but the beauty of collaboration is that it's deeper, um, and then there's deeper alignment. We all are like working towards the same thing, and collaborative partners can really be your allies. If you have that kind of trust and understanding, they can be deep allies, and they can be much more, the change can be deeper rooted and sustainable. So I am definitely a proponent of it, but no in which areas you need to go fast and in which areas you can take your time and be deliberate. So that's what I would say about collaboration. In terms of evolution into the future, and I've said this a couple of times, but my deepest hope is that teacher professional development is children first. That in every room, every conversation is about children learning what they deserve, what is our responsibility towards children, what is our vision towards children. Um, all of our conversations should be rooted in that. Currently, I do see it shifting, but I'm not sure that our entire system is centered on children as of now, and that's something that is my dream and wish to see in the future. Um, I think one thing that gives me encouragement is that if I would say in the 90s, India's push was just about access to schools, kids coming to school. You see the midday meal, all of those things. Ki attendance badhani hai, attendance has to increase, and there was concerted efforts around that, and it took like decade, 2 decades to get us there. And I do think that we've made strides in solving the access issue at least. Um, I do see a larger, like, I feel like we're at this very pivotal point right now, which is what gives me hope. There is conversation a lot around student outcomes, around holistic development. There's a lot of focus on what are children learning, foundational learning, literacy, numeracy. Those have become the focus, and there is a concerted effort happening around that as well. And that gives me a lot of hope. It does, because uh, if we can all come together for this common cause, which is rooted in children, and our policies are also rooted in that, the NCF, the NEP, the professional standards also, the NPST for teachers, everything is coming together, and this is a new wave that's happening, and that gives me a lot of hope around how we're going to be centering on children and their needs and quality first. Um, so that's something that makes me hopeful, and there's already proof points of that, right? The ASA 2024, we're seeing a lot of learning recovery happen because of these concerted efforts, and that's something that gives me a lot of hope. Um, I think what one thing I am cautiously optimistic about is technology and AI. Uh, as Gayatri said, I would love to see it used as an aid. I would love to see it used as something that can help personalization, that can help teacher load on administration, that can help make things more efficient for the teacher. Um, I'm cautious that it should not be used as replacement. So that is what makes me cautious. Other things that I am excited about beyond in service is the potential of pre-service teacher development, and an emerging focus on that. Uh, yeah, so those are things that I'm excited and optimistic about.
Thank you so much, Chandni. Request Siddhesh to share his thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. I won't repeat what has already been said. I'll just add some specifics. Of course, there is no doubt that we should collaborate. So, some ideas for not just the panelists but also people who are attending is I think the way our organizations fundraise, if we are able to, and in the way we strike up these MOUs with states. Say, for example, tomorrow I'm starting a new district. I should be able to go and say that, okay, 25% or whatever X% of this budget is for assessments, and we will be bringing in EI as a partner, and we will be working there. And this is the permissions that you need to be giving for assessment, so that they can give you a third party sort of understanding of whether things are going on track. Similarly, we will be taking care of the TPD and convincing the funders also, whoever are doing it, to do it in this joint way. So this is one big thing. So and then of course having that culture within the team of respecting boundaries, as well as working together for the common goals, all of that. But I think that has to somewhere be consciously, the organization leaders, teams, professionals have to come together and jointly lobby for this with donors and with maybe governments with whom we are doing partnerships. So that's on collaboration, but other points on collaboration I fully agree. In terms of hope and future, I have 2 or 3 points to share. One is yes, of course, pre-service, but I want to talk a little bit about in what direction we need to push some of our government counterparts also to be optimistic is what is the incentive for good teacher professional development? What is the incentive for states to do it well? What is the incentive for the individual teacher to say? Somebody was saying, self-paced learning. Why should I take out that extra time 7 to 8 p.m. while making food and have that platform in my mobile screen on to consume that course? What is that incentive that I'm going to get? Is it just going to be a certification? Is it going to be university credential? Is it going to be something else? Definitely needs thinking. And I'm hoping that similar to how performance grade index has come in, and districts and states are now very, very fast in moving towards ensuring that things, their district is coming up well in those rankings. So is there something that we can introduce where in a meaningful way, without making it again a compliance based activity, but making it meaningful to see what can be that incentive for teachers to do it well, for SCRTs to make their processes better, for governments to also so maybe something where there is a renewal credit based training system where teachers are earning credit. So rather than training being pushed down upon teachers, what can be that pull based mechanism? So these are things that I'm optimistic to try out and see what can work. And again, collaboration can also be in generating the need and demand and appetite for trying out these initiatives. So that is another thing that I'm hopeful about. I'm also quite hopeful about integrating technology, about integrating these new methods while retaining the caution about it not being any replacement. It cannot be. You cannot just screen a video and say that तुम्हारा teaching हो गया, बच्चे teacher के बिना सीख जाएंगे. That's not how it is going to be done ever. So these things. I'll pause here. I think we need some time for audience questions as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Siddhesh. I think great points came up. I think also just a small thought around incentivizing teachers, like how we have, let's say, transfers where the transfers are also based on some grading points for teachers. Can that be also one of the thing as an incentive where the points can be achieved by certain TPD taken up by the teachers? Just a small thought. So we have couple of questions. So the first question, I think these two questions are related to assessment, but then like people feel free to answer. Uh, how often do we need to do the teachers' need-based assessment? Like, is it once a year or twice a year? So this is one of the questions.
I would say definitely not twice a year, and it's not even required every year, but basically maybe a cycle of 3 years is a good cycle, 3 to 5 years. Both I'm thinking of at scale complexity of it, and also the professional development is not a magic wand. So it's going to take its own time to like really get internalized and translate into classroom practices. So overdoing of these assessments can also become more of a limiting factor because we'll not be able to track changes at such a short duration. Manoj, yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Gayatri. Anyone has a different view? Otherwise, I'll move to the next question. Okay, so great. So the second question was, how can school complex meetings be strengthened further, catering to the teacher needs?
Siddhesh, you want to take it from the AP?
Yeah, I can give one example. See, of course, school complex meetings, they are known by different names in different states. Some people call it Kendra Sammelan, some people call it Shikshan Parishad. So where a group of schools and teachers come together. It on paper has great objectives, but it has either evolved or devolved into meetings where administrative matters are cleared, forms are filled, and so on and so forth. But the idea again is what in recently Professor Maithili Ramchand has also written in teacher preparations and so on. The two things which are really important is practice. It has to be something which is practical based. So school complex meetings need not be a training space. It can be a space where demo lessons can be taught, peer feedback similar to the B.Ed days of teachers. Peer feedback can be taken. So this is something, it was again something that I keep discussing. How do athletes become great or teams become great? 80-90% of the time they spend practicing. they drill various scenarios on how to react to one particular scenario, and whatever scenario then comes up in the game, 20% of the time they have to perform and achieve results. Whereas in our profession, whether it is a non-profit sector or whether it is anywhere else or whether it's even teaching, 100% of the time is real game time. So why not carve out some time in the school complex meeting for that practice? Come up with scenarios, come up with differentiation, come up with challenges, and use that to give each other feedback and learn from each other in a safe space where you, even if you make a mistake, it's okay. Like, how can we set in that culture of learning and setting that school complex meeting is my biggest hope for school complex meetings, where it does not devolve into a training space where a PPT is sent to a district resource person and then they do some orientation and just and it carries on, like a compliance based tradition. So that is my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I can add a little bit here. I think we've been experimenting with, I think for us would be similar, would be the cluster level meetings in Uttarakhand. So we look at it at a district level, but also in a space like Uttarakhand where schools are very far apart, travel is difficult at a smaller cluster level. What's worked for us, I mean, very similar. I'm not gonna repeat what Siddhesh said, like just make sure it's around practice. Um, Clarity of the person who's anchoring and facilitating these meetings. Oftentimes, these things are passed down as a circular key, it has to be done, like compliance mode, but the person doesn't have a clear, whoever's the facilitator of these meetings, doesn't have a clear objective or vision behind what these meetings are supposed to inculcate or create for their cluster or create for their block. So what does it mean to have that in terms of what are you driving in terms of teacher competency or teacher insights, and working with that person who's the anchor very strongly? That's number one. The other thing that we've seen has increased motivation and investment of teachers in the cluster meetings has been them bringing their best practices. Bring one practice that you have tried and tested in the classroom that you want to showcase to your peers. That has worked wonders in also not making these cluster meetings feel like a drudgery, because otherwise teachers perceive it as somewhere where they're going to get instructions or administrative tasks, like Siddhesh said. So how do you make it exciting and motivating for teachers where they also get to learn from their peers, and showcase what they have brought or what how they have innovated in their own constraints and conditions? And I think what's beautiful, which has worked, is we create like a best practice kind of a compendium and we take it to a district or a state level, so then teachers also feel celebrated. Apart from demonstrations, this whole thing of like we're taking the expertise of teachers to the district, to the state level, and celebrating them and acknowledging them, that has worked very, very beautifully in acknowledging teachers as well.
Got it. Thanks, Chandni and Siddhesh. Gayatri, would you like to answer any question? Or otherwise I'll go to the next question. Okay,
Yeah,
so we have couple of more questions. How to build system strengthening process in a system where multiple positions are vacant? Has there been any work undertaken by a partner to work on the Samagra Shiksha's agenda in such situation? And yeah, maybe we can take this question. Anyone would like to answer?
I can quickly take this. See, it is
Uh,
of course true that if 50-55% of positions are vacant, system strengthening cannot happen because system by design is handling multiple charges, multiple responsibilities. So वो नहीं होगा. So whether it is empowering an SCRT or that, multiple joint review missions from the has highlighted that positions need to be filled. Multiple governments are aware that positions are vacant. It is not that people are not aware. There are multiple challenges surrounding it, which I am not going to comment on. But yes, that is the necessary condition for ensuring that the system is strengthened. However, even with the current constraint, it is not the case that all vacancies are full in other departments. There are other government departments which are running better than the education department with the same level of vacancies, challenges, binding constraints. There are funding cuts, there are something being diverted, but people find a way to reach some of the outcomes, right? So how do we ensure that within the current constraints we keep improving what is being done, at the same time use whatever influence we have or whatever opportunities and platforms we have to advocate for the fact that positions need to be filled. I think it is not just us. Many funding organizations, research organizations, universities, all of them are talking about positions. So it's not that people are unaware. It's a necessary condition. But however, that cannot be a dependency for those of us who are working. We have to work with what we have, with the cards we are dealt, to solve the problem on a daily basis. This
Thanks,
cascade loss
Siddhesh.
question seems to be
How
never
can we
present
ensure
question. I
yes,
welcome.
minimum information loss and maintain a fidelity of content with training cascaded, then to increase finally. Are there specific strategies or best practices to strengthen? I think at some point, I think Gayatri did mention about asynchronous content and how these can be their own LMS or something. Like, would you like to answer anything else on
Slightly
this?
different, I think, and maybe Siddhesh and Chandni both have rich experience of cascading trainings. But from the kind of trainings that we do, I think couple of things that have helped us is bringing in the bringing the master trainers to a certain level first of all, and also training master trainers for training the train the trainer training, which is where you don't just impart the training to master trainers, but you also sort of observe them training a group before they are actually launched into this cascaded training. Second, I think, is the training manuals. If we have robust training manuals, they can fill in for at times the gap on facilitation that we may encounter at scale level. But Siddhesh, Chandni, if there are additional points that you want to make on this.
Yeah, in fact, I think at LFE's research symposium, we presented a research paper on cascade loss itself. What I can do is I can actually, it's a open resource at SEF. So here, I'll actually post the entire research paper that we did on cascade loss and exactly how we measure it and our tools and principles here for you. But yeah, I think Gayatri's already spoken about the principles behind it. The main thing is that you have to measure, one is you have to measure the cascade loss at every level. So, what is the training proficiency at your mentor teacher level to when they disseminate it to teachers till it reaches the last level? You have to have assessments for it. And then, how do you ensure that there is minimal information loss? Is to actually analyze where is the cascade losing the most, like where is teacher proficiency dipping the most, why didn't that work in your training design? And the other thing is keep your training design iterative. Even when you are cascading, keep it iterative and open, that keep it open to change, even once you are disseminating. I think that's worked for us. And then what are additional tools you need to introduce, that decision making even once the program has started on to implementation, you can still make those decisions and top ups to ensure that where there are weak points, teachers can improve on that. So demonstration videos is a great example, guidebooks. Are there refresher trainings for a particular topic that you need to do? Those are decisions that this data should be telling you. And the last thing is your mentor teachers are the best tool for this. So for us, we have weekly learning circles in Punjab with our mentor teachers, our mentor coaches. So anything where we feel gaps are happening, within that week, we're getting that information to the mentor teachers, the coaches, and they're able to kind of, kind of bridge that gap on the ground. So there are multiple ways you can do it. The main thing is that you should have the information and you should be able to pinpoint key where is it falling apart, where is it dropping, so I can bridge that.
Thanks, Shani, for sharing. And then that resource, I'm sure, like it would be a great to read through the report. And thanks, Siddhesh. I think you have put some points. Is there anything else you want to share about? Okay, that's
No,
great.
just it was very similar to what they're saying. I'm just adding
Right.
basic checks that typically we work
Yeah.
with and supported.
Great, great. I think I don't see any further questions. I think well, maybe we can wrap the webinar. So I just want to share like some thoughts. So it's great. I think I personally, as a listener, as a moderator, enjoyed the lot of sharing shared by each one of you. Uh, like I've made a note for myself, like a lot of things that stood out to me. Like basically, uh, with respect to how the thought of the TPD, how it emerged, like what are the different aspects, like not only pertaining to trainings, but then it's way beyond the trainings. Within the trainings also, like a lot of things that we discussed. The demos, I think multiple times did mention about it. The mentoring program, the handbooks and all that, which will be all of these will become like a great support system for the teachers. Great to hear all these things. Definitely the challenges that's been mentioned by multiple people, what Siddhesh pointed out regarding MGML, or what one of you pointed out about. I think it's not enough just to do the training, but then the follow-up mechanism and reaching till the end of the child, like till that where we are able to see the learning outcomes in the child. So that's the entire cycle. If you are able to look at it from that lens. Also, like the uh, idea of the child at the center, basically what Chandni was mentioning, what child at the center, keeping everything, the hope for the TPD, like being there at that. Uh, and yeah, so for me also, I'm leaving out with some positivity in the sense, I think the last two questions, reflections from you, a lot of things are happening. I think a lot of convergence is also happening, and how things, let's say, some of the initiatives like NPST, the teacher competency metrics, and FLN mission, or these things, like how things are coming where maybe in 90s it was just focused on the enrollment drives and all that, but slowly we are shifting gears and definitely trying to aim at the quality education. And I'm sure, like I'm very like in my personal informal conversations with you guys, or like with other people working at scale on TPD, there are definitely things happening on ground, maybe at a district level, maybe in few districts. A lot of cluster meetings are also happening very rigorously. So I'm leaving this webinar with a lot of positivity that things are happening, but definitely, as Chandni mentioned, we need a lot of patience to work while working with the system and all. So thank you so much, each of you, for joining. There are questions. Also, just wanted to mention to the participants. I think definitely all the participants. Thank you so much for like being so like you were participating in the chat. Like a lot of learnings, a lot of insights. I think you've been sharing, and a lot of good questions, helping the panelists and me to reflect on some of the practices. Just want to mention here ki this is one of the, this is like an introductory webinar we are planning. Like this is what like an introductory webinar. We are also planning to make this as a series with a few more episodes on the TPD at scale. So from our team from LFE, we'll be circulating a Google form where there will be like feedback for this particular webinar. At the same time, if you have any questions in mind, as well as any themes that you would like to understand in the future webinars, so you would love to understand that, and we'll be communicating to you soon on that. So with that note, thank you so much everyone for joining. Thank you Siddhesh, Gayatri, and Chandni for joining. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you.